¡Un forastero!
Like a bolt from the blue, Capcom released another Resident Evil 4 port for the PC and modern game consoles. This incarnation boasts new improvements such as HD textures and 60 frames per second frame rates at full 1080p, which is nice considering how old the game is nowadays. I never got the chance to play Resident Evil 4 back in the day, so naturally a new PC port was alluring to me from the start. But I also wanted to see how this port holds up after the infamous Ubisoft port from days gone by. To put this video into scale, my rig uses an i5 processor with a 450 GTX graphics card and 8GB of RAM. It's a very average rig, but man, it ran Revengeance pretty well. I wonder how it'll hold up to Resident Evil 4 though. The Resident Evil 4 port takes up a hefty 12GB of space from your hard drive, which is somewhat large, but being an HD game, I'm not surprised. What did shock me was how much power this port needed. When running this game, I noticed that my i5 ran at about 50 to 60% usage just by running the game alone, which is mental because other CPU-intensive games and even PS2 emulation doesn't eat up that much of my processor. This has been known to cause problems with people running toasters or folks like me who try to stream it, which will be explained later. The options menu is fairly basic and somewhat bare when it comes to functions. Graphics lets you change resolution, anti-aliasing, motion blur, and swapping between HD and SD textures. There's also a post-processing effect that puts movie filters over your game, but that feels kinda tacky in my opinion. You have the ability to change keybinds on keyboard and mouse controls, but it's very bare bones and doesn't offer you options that you might want to change, such as strafing or inventory management. There's an option to change FPS rates between 30 and 60, but 30 frames per second feels painfully slower than what should be expected from a 30 frames per second animation. There's also no VSync option. Apparently this game is locked at either 30 or 60 Hz refresh rates, but you can't turn this off in case some areas cause slowdown problems. The game's performance is a vast improvement from past incarnations, but comes with its own list of rather weird problems. If you have the power to run it, the game runs fairly smooth with no hiccups or issues, which is good. However, people with low-end rigs or trying to stream it will begin to notice issues from the voracious processor use, namely open areas causing the game to slow to a crawl or cutscenes having desynchronized audio.
Perfect. The big cheese. What?
The game also shows signs that not everything was ready for 60 frames per second. Many elements of the game such as reload animations or cutscenes feel rather choppy when played at 60 frames per second, which doesn't seem bad initially, but you begin to notice a lot of animations didn't get the upgraded treatment. This reeks of laziness on Capcom's behalf, especially after the wonderful Resident Evil Revelations port and how well their other games are coded. One thing this game lauded was HD textures. The developers were bragging that the game was gonna look beautiful in stunning high-resolution models and environments. I do have a question for Capcom, however. Did half of those textures fall out of a truck? While initially the textures are a marked improvement from the GameCube-era counterparts, a bunch of the other textures in the game felt like they were completely untouched. This is especially noticeable in cutscenes when you have these special angles for the environment, and you're treated to a muddy wood texture with a ridiculously detailed bug on it. Given the game's fairly large hard drive usage, I'm left to wonder what exactly is using this space because it's not textures. I usually don't lament over this problem, but man, it appears everywhere and it really causes some dissonance with the player when it's present. Control systems are another strange issue with this game. The game supports keyboard, mouse, and 360 controllers. DualShock users will need Joy to key. Keyboard and mouse will allow for keybind editing as mentioned before, but there's little you could change and the stuff you want to change doesn't exist. The main problem with keyboard and mouse controls is that turning in this game is handled by both mouse movement and the keyboard buttons. There is no strafing in this game. This causes a huge problem because simple movement gets disorienting as hell when your mouse movements and WASD controls clash all the time. It also doesn't help that mouse aiming sensitivity feels really bipolar and almost feels like it has the same issue as Dark Souls and its mouse camera controls. Another issue with keyboard and mouse controls is that inventory management buttons make no sense. You can't use your mouse at all, you use WASD to navigate your stuff, but backspace, delete, and page down are used to move stuff around. They also don't tell you this at all, you have to mash your keyboard to find out what does what. These are the kind of keybinds that you want to edit, but unfortunately you can't. Capcom also missed a golden opportunity to let PC players use their mouse to play around with the inventory, which would have been fun as hell. Suffice to say, if you're gonna play RE4 on the PC, then use a 360 controller. It's really the only way. The Resident Evil 4 HD port feels so weird. Sure, it's a marked improvement over the past incarnations, but the re-release feels shoddy and lazy overall. I find it hard to believe that Capcom, developers who were well aware of how to handle PC game architectures, released a game engine with this many problems. I very rarely say this, but this port does indeed reek of a lazy cash grab with no effort put into it. Should you be the kind of person that wants to enjoy Resident Evil 4 at 60 frames per second and in HD, then this port indeed does deliver. This is the only thing that this port does offer, however. If you just want to replay RE4, then you might as well dust off your old copy. The re-release is a little bit jankier than past versions.